I'm Tom Jod and my wife is Linda. We met at university when I was 23 and she was 21. At the time, I was in the Army, studying for a dual degree in economics and accounting, while she was doing a major in biology. My military duties were irregular but risky. Our unit was given secret missions, often involving taking revenge on someone who seemed friendly. In effect, we were like assassins, with my strength being planning and close combat. I graduated from the Army at 25 and resigned 2 years later to start a family with Mary Linda. We had 2 daughters in 4 years. I worked independently handling accounting for local businesses and trading commodities from home. Linda was busy with the kids, but she later secured a position at a local college-affiliated laboratory. After a decade of marriage with both girls in school, I worked from home to facilitate Linda's return to employment, which she enjoyed. We lived in the house I grew up in. I bought it from my parents when they moved to Florida. Some of our Army missions offered the unit a chance at loot, which we divided among the members. We were financially stable, so we decided to celebrate. In February, we went out with our neighbors for dinner and dancing at a club. There were 8 of us, and each of us had a babysitter for the night. Linda and I had booked a room at the hotel connected to the D Club. She looked amazing at 56, slim with brunette hair, dressed in a blue silky dress. We had a great meal and a fantastic time dancing at the club. During the evening, a group of 6 entered, including Mark Stevens, a prominent local, all-pro linebacker. He was noticed by all the women at our table, accompanied by a lovely blonde woman wearing what seemed like a large engagement ring. Our friend June mentioned she was a cheerleader for the after some time. Steven got engaged to someone else. He came over to our table and asked Linda to dance. I tried to get involved, but Linda was totally uninterested. I went to the bar, passing by them. Linda seemed pretty indifferent. After 2 fast dances, a slow number came on, and Linda embraced Mark. I was annoyed, so I went to the bar, ignoring the disapproving looks from the women at our table. Linda was so absorbed in her dance with Mark that she didn't notice when the slow number ended. They separated and Linda walked back to our table. I stayed at the bar, sipping my coffee, and noticed that Linda seemed flustered. She sat next to June. I went over to them and said, "It looks like you two had fun, but I may have gotten a bit carried away." June explained that it was just a bit of dancing and nothing serious. I felt a bit offended, so I took a seat with June and Linda. They excused themselves to the ladies' room when they returned. I was curious, so I asked where Linda was. June told me that she had left with Mark. I was shocked, so I rushed outside and saw Linda getting into a red Escalade, which then drove off. June addressed the others, asking if they knew what Linda had done. I suggested to June that she should let Linda have her night and that she would likely return the next day. I was really frustrated. I told June that I didn't need Linda to come back and that I thought our relationship was over. When June talked to her, this made a lot of people at the table really angry. I was really cross with them and said that I didn't want to have anything to do with any of them. I said that they knew what was going on but didn't warn me. As I was walking towards the coat check desk, I saw a blonde woman at the table with the others. Who had come with Stevens. She was in tears, so I went over and asked if she was his girlfriend. She said she was, but that it was no longer the case. She told me they had gone to their house on Cherry Lane and he had promised not to do such things once they were engaged. She said he would likely be finished with Linda by morning and would drive her home, enjoying gloating at the husband and the other guy. 2 guys, one black and one white, took offense, but I ignored them. I gave her my business card and told her to give me a call. Despite her tears, she smiled, and I walked away. I got my coat but left Linda's, then went to the hotel room and took my case but left Linda's. I checked out while driving home. A plan suddenly came to me. This had happened to me while I was serving, and it's why I was alive now. It's a shame I hadn't thought of it before. I then parked my car in the garage, engaged the security system, and retrieved a rope stored in the basement. I undressed, put on a black Under Armour suit, a black hoodie, dark gray sweatpants, old sneakers, and 2 sets of gloves. I also grabbed a baklava mask. Climbing up to the attic with the rope, I fastened it securely to a beam as I had done in my childhood home. I climbed out of the narrow window, bounced down the side of the aisle, then ran through the wooded area on that side of the house, hopped the side fence, and headed to the rear workshop. Inside, I got a backpack, some extra wool socks, and a pink hand axe from a toolbox. I packed everything up and started pedaling towards the river through the woods, across the river bridge and up towards Cherry Street. I spotted the house with the football statue and a red Escalade and used the axe to break the passenger side window, triggering the alarm. I hid behind a pillar, and when the door opened, I quickly dealt with the man with 2 blows of the axe. I went back inside, closed the front door, turned and jogged off. I jumped the wall, got my bike, and took the wool socks out. I put the axe, knife, gloves, and shoes inside the backpack, zipped it up, and got on my bike. I rode away toward the river near the bridge and stopped to throw the backpack as far as I could into the river. The river was flowing fast because it had rained the day before. I rode my bike back home through the nearby woods. When I got back, I let myself inside the workshop. I changed my socks and switched to another pair of sneakers. I sprayed an ammonia solution on the bike handles and pedals and wiped them clean. I hopped the side fence and climbed up the house's side, which proved to be more challenging than I expected. Nevertheless, I made it. I got through the window and pulled up the rope. I wiped the windowsill with a rag and went down to the basement. I used the rope to remove all my clothes, including the mask and undergloves, and put them in the washer in the basement bathroom. I showered for a long time, washing everything twice. After that, I put on a pair of exercise shorts and went upstairs, leaving the basement door open to hear. When the washing machine stopped, I thought about it for a moment and decided to wear the clothes from the club the night before. I went back to the basement and transferred the wet clothes to the dryer. I went upstairs, made a snack, had a shot of whiskey, and sat for a while thinking. When the dryer stopped, I took the clothes upstairs and put them away. I put the baklava mask back in the closet where I had initially stored it. Looking at the clock, it was 2:50 a.m. It was 10 a.m. The whole sequence from leaving the club to going downstairs started at midnight. I sat on the couch, had another whiskey, and fell asleep. I woke to the door chime, checked the camera, and saw 2 people, an African-American woman and a white guy with a crew cut. An American woman and a white guy with a crew cut. I figured they were cops, so I opened the door. Detective Asper and Detective Logan introduced themselves and flashed their badges. I was a bit unsure, so I asked about Linda, making sure they knew I was worried about her safety. They said she hadn't been hurt, but that Mr. Stevens had been attacked. I invited them inside. I asked about Linda's whereabouts, and the white detective told me she was in hospital, being treated for shock. I looked at them and they looked back at me, so I suggested they sit down. They chose separate straight-back chairs, and I sat on the couch. I said, "You should explain what happened." I asked Detective Logan to repeat the question, and he asked what I had done since Linda left the club with Stevens. The detective asked me to share the details and insisted on an answer. The detective asked me about what happened next, so I told him that I had gone to our hotel room, packed, and then driven here. I had also had enough to drink to fall asleep on the couch. They asked me if anyone else was there, and I told them that the kids were with a babysitter. When they asked if I'd made any calls or sent emails, I said no, but I did mention that I'd never left Detective Asper alone. He looked around and checked out the security system. I offered to show him I was here and come upstairs. I followed them up there and sat at the computer desk, showing them how the system worked. I downloaded data from 600 pages. Monday. When they arrived, I gave them a jump drive and explained that the system covered all 3 doors on the front and patio, including the sliding door to the pool area. However, the side I had come down had no door, faced the woods, and had 2 large windows that didn't open and lacked coverage. Logan said they would need to confiscate the computer, so I asked why. I suggested they might have tampered with it before arriving. Logan agreed but said it couldn't be gone for more than a day. I told him I would download the same data onto an external drive. I did what they asked and looked around. I let them, but I told them to stay together and with me. They took some pictures and then left. It was 7:10 a.m. It was 7:10 a.m. I let Linda's parents, John and Stephanie, know what had happened. They were at their lake house at the time. John was more surprised by Linda's actions than Stephanie was. Stephanie asked if I planned to see Linda, but I told her I didn't want anything to do with her after what she did. I told them that the guy who was attacked was unlucky, but it wasn't my responsibility. Apparently, he had a history of such behavior. I said that when Linda gets out of the hospital, she needs to stay away from me in the house, and we can make arrangements for her belongings. John suggested that I move out and let Linda stay, but I said that it was my house. I told them it wasn't community property. I called my parents in Florida to give them the lowdown. They were pretty shocked by Linda's behavior. My dad mentioned a headline about Stevens being attacked and executed at his home, which I already knew. The landline rang and it was Judy. She wanted to know where Linda was, having heard about Mark's. I called Judy to tell her Linda was in the hospital with shock and said I didn't want to see her. Judy said I should support Linda, but I said I never would because of what she did. The conversation got heated, and Judy said I was like a pig before hanging up. I showered again and got dressed to pick up the kids from the sitter around 8. When we got home, the kids asked about Linda. I told them she wouldn't be there that day. I suggested we carry on with our day, getting dressed for soccer. I took them to the soccer complex for their noon and 1:30 games. I relaxed while watching them play. Afterward, we enjoyed ice cream before heading home. Upon returning, I found messages on my muted cell phone. One from Linda's parents stated she was at St. Jude's Hospital. I got a few messages while I was at the hospital. One was from a doctor there who asked me to call. Another was from Judy, who told me Linda was with the police and not talking to anyone. She said I should probably calm down and take the girls to see her. I called the girls downstairs and told them their mom was in the hospital, but she wasn't hurt. They wanted to know what happened. I told them your mom went off with a famous football player to his house to have sex last night. That's all I know. I thought about keeping it from you, but I figured you'd find out when she was there. Someone attacked the football guy, but it wasn't her. She must have found him or something because she is in the hospital, in shock. They hesitated about visiting her, but I told them to get dressed and we went to the hospital. I called Dr. Laura Thompson again, who said Linda was traumatized and currently in a catatonic state. I asked about bringing the kids, but she was hesitant. The doctor asked if I planned to see her. I said I wasn't sure yet. I suggested bringing the girls if it might help. Did they know about the circumstances? I told her about Linda's involvement with the football guy. I also told her the girls were dressed and ready to come. I said it might help Linda, and she agreed to meet us in room 3 in 30 minutes. Dr. Thompson, a psychiatrist in her late 30s, spoke briefly with us before addressing the girls. She explained their mother's severe. The girls seemed shocked and a bit disoriented, as if seeing Linda might be a good idea. So, I went with them to the door and looked in. Linda was sitting in bed, staring at a TV with cartoons on it. The girls tentatively approached her, and the oldest one touched her hand and called her mom Shelley. The other girl followed, but Linda didn't react. Shelley started to cry, so I comforted her, picked her up, glanced at Linda, and took her hand to lead the girls out. I mentioned that we had tried to contact Linda. I asked if Linda would wake up and told her she would eventually. I suggested they might visit her again soon. Shelley whispered, asking what if she doesn't wake up. I reassured her that she will. I know it might take time. The doctor said, "Girls, I will surely let you know when she comes back from this." We left the hospital. Both girls were crying in the car. I wondered whether I should have taken them. I wanted to see if their presence would help Linda, despite my reaction to her infidelity. I hadn't wished this on her. I felt remorseful, though she deserved to suffer, not like this. I felt some tears on my cheeks back home. I made eggs and toast for them to eat, intentionally involving them in the cooking to lift their spirits. Then I put on a movie for them in my office. I called a friend, a public defender, seeking information on what happened at Stevens's house after I left. He couldn't obtain police reports, but suggested ambulance run reports might be publicly available. I asked him to. I got that if possible, and we hung up in the living room. I watched the movie, thinking about what might happen in an hour. My lawyer friend called back, emailing me the ambulance run report, which was pretty distressing. I shared the details of the police visit with him. He said that if security didn't see anyone coming or going, I probably didn't need to worry. But he warned me about what the police might do and recommended I get a lawyer if I needed one. I didn't think I needed a lawyer, so I called the woman he recommended. When the police reviewed the ambulance report, they found Linda with Stevens's head in her lap, covered in blood and dressed in a thin robe. She was chanting "no" over and over. The police took her to the hospital, where she remained unresponsive. An officer had asked if she saw who did it, but she didn't respond. This made me wonder if she would ever recover. I did some research on PTSD, having done so before. In particular, I explored shock-induced catatonic states. I noted that people can recover from the catatonic state, but that there can be long-term effects. PTSD lawyer Joan Drake scheduled a Monday morning appointment at 9. On Sunday, I gave Linda's cell number to the police, but they didn't contact her that day. I spent the day with the girls, trying to reassure them that Linda would be back soon and that they still needed our help. I was curious about how Linda would react to me. I doubted that she had seen anything significant, but I couldn't be sure. I didn't think she had any experience with me that would lead her to think that I was capable of what I did. I thought it might make her think twice about trusting me. On Monday, I watched the news to see what they were saying about Stevens. Linda wasn't mentioned, but it was known that he hosted a married woman during the attack. The police were called by a neighbor in response to Linda's screaming. So far, no one but the authorities had connected Linda or me to the liquidation, but I thought that would change in time. Joan Drake, a lawyer, came to see me. I heard the story, got the ambulance report, and was pretty shocked after seeing the security video. I asked for my computer to be returned to me at work and gave Joan a retainer. She called the police station to ask for Detective Asper to be called in to get it back. I'd already looked up PTSD and found out about shock-induced catatonic states. It seemed that people usually recovered from the catatonic state but could be affected for years by PTSD. The lawyer, Joan Drake, made an appointment for me to see her that Monday morning at 9:30. She gave me her cell number in case the police came earlier, but they didn't. She said I had enough time to see if it had been altered and that I knew it hadn't. I agreed, saying, "Okay, I'll send someone tomorrow morning to get it from you." "No, I'll send someone from the office." I shook my head, indicating he wouldn't be coming. She nodded in understanding. "Okay, he'll be there at 9 o'clock. When she was off the phone, I told her I wouldn't talk to the cops and that I'd have a phone with me to record any discussions. I left that afternoon when the girl returned from school. They immediately asked about Linda. I'd contacted the doctor, but there was no significant change. They got on with their homework, and later we ordered pizza, jokingly mentioning that if their mom didn't return soon, I'd have to learn how to cook, which made them laugh. I'm actually quite skilled in the kitchen, just not. Laura's sister went upstairs, and Laura asked me if I would forgive her mom for getting involved with another man. I said that I just wanted her to get better. Then the landline rang, and Jim Bean from the newspaper said he was from the Trib. He told us that we had information suggesting that it was your wife, Linda, who was with Mark Stevens when he was killed. Can you confirm that you want to keep this private? I explained why it might be a bad idea. What would happen to my 2 kids at school? Jim suggested that if this information were to come out, I should confirm it and then be asked about my feelings regarding the passing of my wife's lover. I said that I would take legal action against him and his paper if any damage was done to my family as a result of their publication. Jim said that this was going to come out, and I conceded that I could see a TV truck parked in front of the house through the window. I said, "I suppose so." "You're right, sorry." I had to go. A knock came at the door and I checked the camera feed. I saw a young woman with a microphone. I spoke to her over the intercom. I told her she was trespassing and I would call the police. Is your wife there, Mr. Jod? I called the local precinct and asked them to help me remove the press from my front porch. They sent 4 officers and they dispersed a group of 6 people. Next, I called the doctor and asked her to secure Linda before the press invaded. I also discussed relocation and adjusting the girls' schooling with them. However, they wanted to keep going to their current school, even if they had to live somewhere else. I said I'd think about it. I got in touch with my lawyer, Joan, to see what she thought. She agreed to speak to the press to help sort things out. The statement she issued through her office said we wanted privacy and that we weren't going to comment on the rumors about my wife or make any future comments. It also warned that the media's continued presence outside the house would be actionable if it damaged the family and asked them to leave. Meanwhile, Detective Asper and her commander announced a press conference for 7 p.m. The police said that Mark Stevens had been attacked and killed with a sharp object outside his home. A woman was inside the house at the time, but it wasn't clear if she saw what happened. The investigation is still going on. The first thing they asked about was the woman's marital status and whether her husband was a suspect. Raspier said that everyone knew her name, so it was assumed she was married. He said that they looked into her husband, but they didn't find any evidence that he was involved in the attack. In fact, he seemed to be. A reporter who was at a distance from the scene asked about other women, particularly married women and their husbands. The police said they were looking into claims that Mr. Stevens had seduced married women. It seemed that he had taken several of them while their husbands were present, which prompted further investigation. Commander Johnson interrupted and said that any additional information would be shared before the Wednesday briefing. The police left, shouting. I got in touch with the school to arrange for the girls' work to be delivered or sent electronically for the next few days. I gave Linda's parents a heads up to be on their guard against the press, though they weren't around at the time. They'd also disappeared from our street on Tuesday. The doctor called to say that Linda was responding well, and the police were with her. I let her parents know and took the girls to the hospital. When we arrived, the police were just leaving. Detective Asper expressed a desire to talk to me, and after meeting with her, I agreed. Linda seemed a bit dazed and was just exchanging greetings. I got the girls through to Linda with smiles and hugs, but she didn't seem to acknowledge me much. The girls told me about the TV trucks in school, but Linda seemed to drift off, so the doctor suggested letting her rest while her parents spoke with the girls. I had a quick chat with Detective Asper, who said she seemed to be recovering. I said maybe she was, but I wasn't sure. I asked if he planned to take her home until she recovered, and Asper said that after her recovery, he was sure they would be separated. I said that he should give her a break and asked what more punishment she could receive than what had already happened. I explained that for me it wasn't about punishment but about respect and trust. I said that I would never trust her or respect her, noting that the feeling might be mutual. Asper smiled and suggested that she might fear me and I might not be trusted either. He accused me of trying to provoke him, stating that he knew he had nothing to do with Stevens getting attacked. He acknowledged my Army background and formidable reputation in the service, thought maybe a regular guy couldn't have done it, but perhaps I could have. I said I didn't think so and that we had home security footage from Stevens' house. Asper said it wasn't his problem and that he wasn't there. He ended with a threat, saying he'd be seeing me around in the next few days. Linda was back to normal. I took the girls every day but didn't spend much time in the room with them on the 4th day. Linda was set to be discharged, so she asked to speak to me privately. I sent the girls away. She came out and apologized for what she'd done, saying that embarrassing me like that needed more than just a simple apology. She said that she wanted to come home when she was released, but she was worried about the media presence and how it might affect the girls. I told her that she was good at sneaking out, and she didn't look up. She said she'd check with security, and I told her that I didn't want to be around her, but that I had no choice for now. I told her that I didn't mean to hurt her, and I shared my thoughts on. When I asked Linda if Stevens had slept with her, she said they were undressed in bed when the commotion started. I knew she was lying. I couldn't say I believed her or would believe anything she told me. I suggested we see how things go, but I couldn't trust her again. Despite all this, I expressed my love for her and left. I went to the hospital security office to arrange for a car to pick Linda up and take her to my house at 4 p.m. morning. Everything went according to plan, and she arrived home at around 4:45. The kids and her parents were there with me. I'd set up a bed in my office for myself while Linda would sleep in our room. The rest of the day was pretty awkward. Linda, her mom, and the kids played Monopoly in the living room. Her dad and I went to the patio to talk. JN asked what I was going to do. I said I didn't really know, but it looked like we were finished. I encouraged him to try to forgive, pointing out the long history of love between them and their wonderful family. John expressed doubts about their Long John was confused by Linda's actions and upset that she said they didn't have a close relationship. I acknowledged her statement, but said it was hard to know for sure given how much time they spent together. I suggested it might make a difference if they didn't use protection and raised concerns about potential consequences like diseases or pregnancy. John wasn't happy about the idea and agreed to let Linda stay for now, but said I should find another solution soon. We went back inside, ate pizza, and her parents left. As far as I knew, they didn't talk to her about Mark while putting the girls to bed. Laura asked Linda why she went to have sex with Mark. She apologized, admitting she'd made a mistake. Laura said she was confused about Mark, saying he wasn't there. She promised to discuss it later when she knew more. The girls went to bed and Linda went to the kitchen. I followed about 10 minutes later, making a call to my public defender friend about the autopsy report. He confirmed it was a public document. Linda was drinking a Pepsi and asked if I'd be sleeping in our room. I said no, that I'd be in the office. She said she'd welcome me any time, but that there was uncertainty in our future. I said I was skeptical, and she said I should be patient, that it had all happened in the past week. I went up to my office and went to bed, but didn't sleep well. I woke up at 5, it's midnight. Morning. I made coffee and got the autopsy report from my friend. I read it carefully, especially the analysis of the injuries. It showed evidence of ejaculate and female secretions on Stevens's foos and scrotum. It seemed Linda had lied about not having been close to him. I believed this because she was there about 2 hours before he was killed. She came down and we took the girls to school. They were a bit subdued, but they were also a bit subdued when we were driving them. I spent a long time thinking about what I should do. I would never have let Linda back into the house if I'd known she was ill, but there were some advantages to that, including making things a little easier on the girls if things settled down. As I entered the house, another TV truck pulled up outside and a young woman got out, shouting if Linda was at home. If I forget, I told her, Linda would give her a hard time. I smiled, waved, and warned her not to come onto the property. I went inside. Linda had made some biscuits and offered me one, which I took. She informed me about a TV truck outside, expressing uncertainty about whether they knew I was there. Suggesting that maybe they shouldn't. I asked what the TV crew wanted, pointing out that they had already published my name and details about my activities at Mark Stevens's house. Linda asked if they could cause more damage, and I said that they probably could think of something. I looked at her, thinking about what to do. She asked if I meant about her or about us. I said that I wanted her to write down exactly what happened last Friday, from when the confrontation occurred until she ended up in the hospital. She said it didn't have to be immediate, but she'd try to get it done soon if possible. Linda agreed to try to acknowledge that it might be traumatic and mentioned the need to call work to check if she still had a job. I asked why her job would be at risk for cheating on me, expressing doubt that her workplace would care. She said she'd been off for a week and called her workplace. They let her take the week off as sick leave and the next week as vacation time. She went to her bedroom and started typing on her computer. I left her alone and went to my office to look into the autopsy material. I made sure I'd get the results. The test results were back in a few days, despite the situation. Linda seemed to be trying to act normally around me, which I acknowledged, but I thought she must have questions about what happened. Our routine continued for 2 days until I got the autopsy test results. Linda's DNA, I found traces of semen on Stephen's underwear, so it's clear she lied about the sex. I was waiting to see what she wrote to me about what happened, but I just couldn't see continuing life with her as my wife. After dinner the next day, Linda came into my home office. I finished writing, and she handed me. She gave me a printout and read me what she'd written. She apologized and said she was sorry for what she'd done. She explained what happened at the party. She said that when Mark asked her to dance, she felt thrilled because he was so attractive and well-known. While they were dancing, she didn't think of anything else. She pulled herself to him and felt his size and hardness. She admitted that at that moment she would have slept with him right there, captivated by his attractiveness. Mark suggested slipping out the side door to go to his place, promising her the coital experience of her life. She believed him when he said it. When the dance ended, I wasn't at our table. She'd arranged to go to the women's room with Jay when I returned. She could sense my anger, but thought I'd get over it in time. She was still hung up on Mark, so she went out the side door and they drove to his house. Mark kissed her, carried her upstairs to his bed, and they slept together. She cleaned him and performed another close contact act, but a car alarm interrupted them. Mark left, instructing her to wait. Looking out the window, she couldn't see over the porch roof, but noticed someone in black running away and jumping the fence. Linda found a robe, went to the front door, and discovered Mark lying in the. She ended up in the hospital with a bashed-in head. She felt guilty as if it was her fault for sinning. The police arrived and she apologized for everything, expressing love and confusion about her actions. I looked up at her, tears streaming down her face, and she asked if I was the person she saw. I clarified that I was. I was at home all night drinking and regretting the end of my marriage and the changes that would come to my family. I told her I had hate in my heart, but I also told her that the police had confirmed my presence on the security tape. She acknowledged what they said, but I interrupted to say that I believed Stevens got what he deserved. She said he didn't deserve that and that he was nice and had an impact on my life. I replied that we didn't need to go there and that I would never be able to love her again, maybe not at all. I pointed out that the person I thought I married would never have done what she did. I wondered if the sex was worth what we'd lost. I said that it was great, but not worth the consequences. I thought about coming home the next day if things had been different, but with Stephen dead, I felt screwed up for good. She said that I killed him and quickly left the room. I said that our relationship had become very cold. I decided not to try to convince her of my innocence or to fix things between us. I also decided never to tell her what happened. I figured that if I did, she'd immediately turn me into the authorities. She'd just admitted that, if Stephen hadn't been executed, she'd have to face the consequences of our reckless night. Maybe not in those words, but I still filed for divorce a few weeks later and asked for custody of the kids. I asked for custody of the kids. Linda still had her job, so I didn't ask for alimony, but I also didn't ask for child support. I wanted her to have liberal visitation. Linda had recovered sufficiently that I asked her to move out. She went to stay with her parents. I had her served there soon after. Her father called and asked me to withdraw the papers. I told him that Linda was upset and that she should get a lawyer. He was pretty angry, but I wasn't sure if he was angry with me or her. He asked about visitation, so I told him that she could come over any night and stay until they went to bed. Linda came over the next day at 5. I prepared macaroni and cheese, and we ate with the girls. We played board games with them and put them to bed. Linda said she wanted to talk, but I said no. She said we needed to work things out for the girls' sake. She said they'd have to adjust if we were apart. She said we should find a place where they could visit. She said we should do it soon. We finalized the divorce and agreed that I could have visitation rights as soon as possible. She expressed regret for her mistake and professed her love, but I rejected the idea, stating that there was no way we would stay married after her open involvement with that man. I made it clear that it was time to move on, but Linda began to tear up and cry despite feeling some sympathy. I wasn't sorry enough. To change my mind, our marriage was over. The divorce went through, we worked out a joint custody agreement, and Linda had an apartment with a big second bedroom for the girls. The two of us settled into a distant but amicable relationship focused on the girls. After about 4 months, I began to date women from our circle and from work. I knew that I was unattached and I seemed to attract their attention. When Linda had the girls, I brought several women home for the night. None of them lasted too long, though. The sex was usually good and sometimes great. I stayed away from married women, although some of them seemed eager to be with me. After my experience, though, I thought it was wrong to do that. Linda was good with the girls, but not so good by herself. She was taking antidepressants and sleeping a lot. But she still managed to go to work and do her job. I was told by her parents and the girls that she wasn't dating. 10 years on, Shelley went off to college today. Laura was supposed to go to her junior year. The two of them had gotten used to the joint custody arrangement and seemed to be doing quite well. They both dated in high school and presumably in college for Laura. I've had a long-term relationship with a younger woman named Cody. I was in a long-term relationship with a younger woman named Cody. We met at a bar one night. Like me, she was divorced with 2 children at home. Her husband had moved to the West Coast. We met when she was 35, and her kids were in high school. They were twins in their sophomore year, heading off to college. She and I moved in together at my house. I loved her. She was lively and smart. We had great sex. She wasn't as beautiful as Linda, but she was pretty and guys paid attention to her when we went out. I told her early on about all the commotion surrounding Mark Stevens' passing without revealing how he had died. The publicity eventually subsided and no one was ever arrested or charged. One Saturday, Detective Logan showed up at my house. He showed up at my house, so I invited him in. I was home alone. He mentioned his recent retirement and said he was happy about the good pension. I congratulated him and asked why he was there. He said he'd become convinced I'd killed the man, but that maybe I hadn't killed the man. I denied any involvement, and Logan congratulated whoever did. I asked why he thought Linda didn't deserve it. Logan said it was just one night and that Linda did what many married women might do when someone came on to them. He suggested that if it had been a discreet meeting, we could have gotten over it, but it was too in your face. I asked about his partner, and he said she was now a captain and a real go-getter. He left, and we never heard from him again. Linda eventually made a partial recovery. We rode together when I took Shell to school on the way back. I asked about her well-being. Linda said she was okay and had a boyfriend, sort of like a friend with benefits. I told her that Cody and I were together and that we might move in together once her kids went off to school. Linda whispered that she wished none of it had happened and that she regretted the missed opportunity to be empty nesters. She apologized and we both ended up crying. Later, she moved into her friend's apartment, but I don't think she ever fully recovered from that night. I also never regretted dealing with the man. I believe it might have saved many marriages. It was an effective altruistic deed.